Howdy, everybody. It's the Keychains podcast. My name's Steve.
And I'm Ryan.
And so this is Wednesday, not Friday or Saturday, which we normally record, because I went to a game convention in not Worcester. That's
Rhode
Massachusetts. In Warwick, Rhode Island. I went to Captain Con. Ryan did not go because revenge.
It was. My parents were killed by a convention, a traveling convention that ran over them.
Oh, yeah, gypsies.
Yep. I think they called it a circus or something. I don't know.
Oh, all right. That's fair. So that was neat.
I guess it's their fault for standing in front of the trucks, but
true. So
that's some very mild revenge. I'm just not going to participate in your event. Like, oh darn! Wow, you really showed us, man. That dish was served cold.
All right. Anyway, so there were no Keyforge events at Captain Con, which was kind of a bummer. There was plenty of Keyforge being played though, which was super cool. Just walking around random tables, saw people playing stuff. Considered asking them about it, but let them play their game instead. Picked up three new decks. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. We played a lot of games, but I only ended up playing like one game of Keyforge and got my face stomped, which was fun. So, and then we didn't play this week because of inclement weather. So if you have any clue, we're both in the Northeast. That was rude. I shouldn't have said it that way. But if you've picked up on the clues that we've placed, we both live in the Northeast, so we caught the worst part of that storm. But we did play 2 weeks ago.
Yes,
and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was.
So what did you end up doing while we were there? Because you and I we probably played like one game together that whole night, because there was a lot of people for once.
Yeah, there was, we had it's a lot for us. We had other people, it may not be that impressive, but yeah, we had 7. And so like people were trying to rotate. Well, no, we didn't have 7 at first. We had 6 because myself and the woman I was playing against, we finished our game, but then the 2 other pairs of people weren't done. They were like halfway through, so we're like, all right, well, let's play another one. And so this awkward, like, all right, we're done ours, they're not done theirs, so I guess we'll wait again.
Yeah, that was kind of a bummer, but
it was fun.
It was great.
No, it was fun. She had some good decks. I was trying to, so with the idea of doing like a reversal tournament at some point in mind, which for those unfamiliar, reversal tournament is where you bring your deck and then your opponent brings their deck and you swap and you play the whatever best of 3 with your opponent's deck. So the idea is you bring the absolute worst deck you own to those events. So some of the decks that I wasn't a huge fan of when I initially started playing, I've kind of trying to put those through their paces to see how bad they are, in what ways are they bad, because I kind of want to know them myself before I try to hand them off to someone else. And it turns out a little bit of a first world problem here, but all of my decks are mediocre or better. So, darn.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the key part of this whole thing. There are people who I think really do look at their decks and like, this deck is garbage, but I think a lot of it comes down to, I'm sure if you do the math, like decks are going to average out as being like what you said, like perfectly playable, but maybe not broken powerhouses.
It's going to depend on a couple different things. It's going to depend on the strength of your opponent's deck, the style of your opponent's deck, and then so if you have a mediocre, even if you have a bad deck, if your opponent has a bad deck, then it's not going to seem like that bad of a deck necessarily. I mean, there are some objective, universal bad quality indicators you can look for. Like if it takes you 20 turns to get 6 Ember for your first key, that's probably a bad deck. But it can also come down to how good or bad your opponent might be. Like, if your opponent is not that skilled of a player and is missing opportunities left and right, then your deck is going to perform better than if say it was against the exact same deck with a different opponent. Right. You're going to have a different performance thing. So it's really tough. And even then, the different cards you draw at different times in the game, like you just might draw the perfect opening hand and then the perfect next card and the perfect next card and like just get the best game that deck could ever possibly have. And blow the other person out of the water, even though the deck is objectively not a good deck.
Right.
So it's really tough to kind of get a feel for it, like accurately.
Yeah. So I'm not going to go too much into what how my games went, mostly because we have a lot to talk about today. But
Yeah.
I played a game with one of the people, Pete, where I played an Annihilation Ritual on the first turn. And let's just say hilarity ensued.
well,
I refer
well,
to it.
let's
Oh, go ahead.
uh, for the audience, what does Annihilation Ritual do?
Sure. So Annihilation Ritual is if it's an artifact that gets played, and if a creature would go to the discard pile for any reason, it is purged instead.
It's an
It's
artifact,
an artifact.
and yet they named it
I
Ritual.
know. I thought that was a little weird too. But especially given who's made the game, and then on top of that, like some infamous cards from another game that the person has made. Yeah, the thought of ritual definitely seems like it doesn't read an artifact to me, but it is an artifact, and a powerful one at that.
Yeah. So every time I missed what you said. Every time a creature would go to the discard pile, it gets purged instead.
Correct.
That's pretty rare. So, and you have that out turn one,
ha-
unless the other person has a way to get rid of artifacts. That's your creatures are all one and done.
It did never left the board. He had one artifact removal, and it was the Alm of Gorm, and
Oh
it
yeah.
was we looked for it at the end of the game, and it was the last two cards.
Nice.
So the one option he had, he never drew. So but it was fun. We had a blast. It was kind of a really good like back and forth game. The deck that has that card in it also has a bunch of shadows in it.
Oh,
So
okay.
I had a too much protect, which is if your opponent has 5 or more Ember, you reduce them to you steal all but 5, and so he just kept killing my creatures. So I had a deck of maybe, including the cards that were played on the table, I probably had a total of 15 cards left. So a little over half of my deck was purged. So most of the stuff I had was actions at that point. So I just kept playing them for Amber, and then he would gain a bunch, and then I would just too much protect it back to me, and then just kept doing that back and forth. Ultimately, I won that game. I didn't think I was going to win just because of like how ridiculous that first turn play was. I was just like, do you want to have this game be a spicy game, or do you want it to, be a little bit more relaxed? And he's like, no, we should just go full on spicy. I was like, all right, my turn. Annihilation Ritual.
I like it.
So it was a good time. It was a good time. So the biggest of news dropped this week. They had a surprise stream yesterday with an interview with Richard Garfield. And I know, we've both been kind of busy this week. I actually had a bunch of time to go back and sit through and rewatch the video, and I took down a bunch of, took away a lot from that stream. Did you end up getting to watch it at all?
No, I was swamped this week, so I'm going to be exposed to most of this stuff. I've seen some spoilers, going through Twitter a little bit here and there, but for the most part, this will be largely new to me. So I'm looking forward to it.
All right. So, FFG has released information about their next set coming around the end of Q2. They said their kind of guideline time frame is between April and June. That seems like a good time to release something like this. And I'll explain why as we go through a bunch of the details. But that's still a few months away, so you still get plenty of time with what you've got going on currently with Call of the Archons. But so the name of the new set is called Age of Ascension. If you go on their website, you can find the video and all the details there. But we're gonna like cover a lot of the stuff at a medium level. So I guess we'll just start with that. They're going to release a new starter set with Age of Ascension. It's going to have 2 sealed decks with no beginner decks in it. The token sheet is going to be smaller, so the keys will be smaller. There's a lot of complaints about the size of the current token set and how big the keys were. So with this being,
Really?
yeah,
Huh.
yeah,
I thought they were fine.
yeah, I
I don't
guess a
know.
lot of people were just like they couldn't fit them in deck boxes. I mean, even when I was trying to
Oh,
do
okay.
stuff, yeah,
That's fair. I get that then. Because then since they did the stun cards and the power cards, you kind of throw everything into like a little deck box. It would be perfect, but if it doesn't fit, yeah, I get it.
right. So speaking about the stun and power cards, they've been replaced with tokens as well, which I think is
Nice.
maybe a good reason to buy this set again. But I have other plans for my tokens, so I probably won't do this. I'll probably
And
buy
see,
this to get somebody else into it, though.
yeah, and see, I was smart because I held off on getting the starter. Not that it was available, but I held off on getting it and just got 4 random decks instead, and have been using those educational cubes. So now I have another opportunity to get a better starter for less money because the price point's lower too,
Yeah,
clocking in at $24.95 instead of 100. I mean $40.
$100.
It's like 100 on Amazon now.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
like 80 to
fair.
$100 on Amazon.
Yeah,
So it's a dig at the secondary market.
so, the other thing that it's going to come with is 2 poster style playmats, which is super cool. I am not. My personal feelings on this is I don't like paper playmats generally when games come out with them, just because of how folds work, and it becomes this big uneven mess, and it's just never. I never find it to be a fun experience.
I agree.
So I guess we should just move into a little bit about the set itself. So I think the first thing I want to mention is there are no new houses in the set. They have mentioned that they are very interested in printing new houses as the sets go forward, but there will be no new houses in this set. Another thing that they were saying about the set is that all decks are going to be compatible with all sets. So this set, Age of Ascension and Call of the Archons are going to be still completely compatible. There's nothing that's, there's no sets that are going to rotate out of rotation
Okay.
straight from Richard Garfield's mouth. If you go watch that video, he says that in the video.
So when you say compatible, you mean like in terms of tournaments and stuff. If you go to a tournament where you bring decks, it's not going to matter that you have a deck from the first set.
Right. Like they're hoping.
That's still very fine.
So their reasoning for this in the video was that since these decks are pre-constructed, you can't take them apart. They can print
Mm-hmm.
things they can print things as they need to. So you never have to worry about the power curve kind of getting a little out of control because they're
Right.
and they because the decks are pre-constructed, they can actually, play a deck from each set and then be like, "Oh, so this seems like, this is where these powers differ," things like that.
Yep. So
So
if it comes that like people are worried about those turn 1, turn 2 kills where you can draw through your entire deck, they can start printing cards at common that can do something about that, like gain an ember every time your opponent draws a card during their what the heck is it, the main phase, what the
it's
heck
step
is that
3.
called, step 3.
Yeah, it doesn't. They don't have phase. They're just steps. Step 1, 2, 3, 4.
Gotcha.
So yeah. So
So I mean they can bake answers into future cards and stuff, which would be
yeah,
interesting.
and it seems like they've done a little bit of that already. So in terms of the cards, it's going to be another 370 card set. So the first set was 370 cards. This set's going to be 370 cards. However, they're being split up in a very interesting way. 204 cards of this set are new cards to Keyforge. So they're going to have, their new mechanics for the most part. Uh, you know, things are being switched up on existing mechanics, stuff like that. And then they're going to have 166 reprints that are going to come to the set as well. Based on what they were saying, most of the cards are that are being rotated out. So there is a bit of rotation here, but that's just mostly in the sense of what legacy cards are we printing in this set. So most of the cards that are going to be not reprinted in Age of Ascension are going to be commons. Richard Garfield's reasoning for that too was, a lot of people see the commons. The commons are, the most played cards. But rares become more and more, we've been playing this game for how long now? Almost 2 months, and we're
Right.
still running across rares. We're like, what does that card do? So it'll be cool to see a lot of those rares coming forward to Age of Ascension. Uh, but the other cool thing, and I don't know if you knew this, Ryan,
Is that they're going to reprint one of the rares is going to be Key of Darkness, and I'm going to get it in every single one of my decks and hate it.
yeah, that was in the thing too.
He specifically mentioned me by name. I figured.
They actually said that they have a deck waiting for you where there's a Key of Darkness Maverick.
There's Key of Darkness Maverick. There's 2 Key of Darkness Mavericks.
That would be
So one for each
terrifying.
house. And it's called Ryan, Complainer About All Things.
Yes. I think you can find that deck might be registered already.
Yeah, probably.
So the cool thing that they're doing is they are going. So we talked about those commons that aren't printed in the set, or they're saying mostly commons, but they're going to still print those cards in this set. So they're going to have another card type called Legacy, which will be a chance for you to get those unprinted cards in the new packs, similar to the way Mavericks work.
Okay, so it's not a new card type in the sense of action upgrade or anything. It's
New
another
rarity,
type
I
of
guess.
Maverick. Yeah, rarity might be a better way to
Yeah.
call it. Yes. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like,
That's really cool, actually.
yeah, I think potentially like key charge may be a thing that might rotate out. I mean, they have not said what's rotating out that we've seen so far. But I could see key charge being a card that might hit the bricks.
Right. Now, I assume we've seen some spoilers and everything, but we haven't got the full list released yet.
We have there is a bunch, like if you want to find the spoilers, they are out there. I might post one of the spoilers in the show notes. We'll see, depending on what we've got going on here. But with that, there are a couple of new keywords. I'm going to list them off, and then we'll talk about them each individually. So there's alpha, omega, and deploy. So the reason why I wanted to do this way is because they do some interesting things that we might need to get a little bit down deep with. So alpha. When you play a card that has alpha, it must be the first card that you play that turn. So if you want to play that card, you can't play any other cards before that.
Sorry. So with Wild Wormhole, for example, that's a whiff.
That would be a whiff.
So what happens in that case? Because I think it's the same as the situation with the what's it called, the Kelpie dragon.
Yeah, and there's True Baru. If you don't have any amber and you draw
Right.
True Baru, you can't play it.
In Kelpie dragon, you have to have 6 ember, I think, for it to be able to play it. Correct.
7. Yeah.
7. So what happens when I know that you're not allowed to play it, but does it go to the discard pile or does it go back to the top of the deck?
It just goes to the back to the top of your deck. So
Okay.
If you're thinking like in Magic terms, Wild Wormhole gives you a scry at that point.
Right. And I guess for anyone,
your graveyard.
yeah. So for anyone that's not familiar with Wild Wormhole, it's a Logos card that it's an action. You play it and you gain an ember, and then you reveal the top card. You reveal the top card of your deck, and then you play that card. So if it can't be played, then you just stick with the reveal the top card of your deck part.
Yep. So Omega, I mean, I'm sure you're all seeing a theme here. Can only be played if it's the last card that you play that turn.
I see what they did there.
Yeah, see? So if you play the Omega, it ends your turn the moment that, like, once everything resolves, it immediately ends that card's or your turn. You immediately go right to step 4 once that card resolves.
Right. Yeah, so it doesn't end your turn, but it moves you to the next step. Whether you want to or not. So that's when you don't want to get off Wild Wormhole.
Yeah, that is not one you want. So that's where I was talking about, like they're starting to print in some things that I think will kind of stop those infinite loop decks.
Right.
So because like if you top deck, you play your library access, you draw that first card and you play it, and then it's well, it's an Omega card. I end my turn. So eventually you're going to hit those speed bumps when you're doing those things. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
And then the last keyword is deploy. So up until this point, anytime you play a card that is a creature, it goes on a flank, right? So your left flank or your right flank. With deploy, you can place it anywhere on the battle line instead of a flank. So I guess there's a couple of cards that do this, but the best example I'm gonna kind of like throw out there is, imagine if Bulwark had this ability,
Yeah.
which would make Bulwark completely overpowered. But it'd be that idea, like you play Bulwark next to two creatures you want to protect, and now you've got that. There's a bunch of spoilers out there for it. I just don't have them pulled up at the moment.
Well, I've got one of the ones that you put in the show notes here. We've got Lamindra, who is an elf thief. She is a creature from Shadows. She has 1 power, no armor. She has Deploy. This creature can enter play anywhere in your battle line. She has Elusive, which first time this creature is attacked each turn, no damage is dealt. And then Lamindra's neighbors gain Elusive.
Yeah.
So you put her next to between a Bulwark and a Shadow Self, and you got a good time.
Yeah, I actually added this card not for the deploy part. Totally forgot about that being in her card text. I added it for the next point that we're gonna get to. So yeah, but that's a good example of how deploy works. There is another card in this set. Give me 2 seconds and I'll go look it up. So there's a Shadows card. It's an action called Swindle. Not only is it an alpha card, so you can only play this card before doing anything else in your step, is how it reads. It is also an Omega card.
Okay.
Which means that you immediately move to your next step once you play this card. But it's a play action that has you steal 3 when you play it.
Okay.
So
that's the only thing you can do on that turn.
Yep.
Interesting.
It is pretty much play that card and then that's it.
Interesting.
So if you do have Logos though, you can. Oh no, you can't. That would be a total bummer. If you Wild Wormholed that card, that would suck.
I mean, that would get 4 Ember Swing, 1 off the Wormhole, and then you'd steal 3. That's not the worst thing in the world.
You can't resolve that.
Oh, because it's not the alpha. Ah.
Yeah.
Yep. Well then.
So
that's poopy.
So interesting, to say the least. But yeah.
So I think I see in the notes here that your next point was that because of deploy, there's a lot of cards that, or at least a few cards that are printed that have synergy with their neighbors, and that way you can impact these cards with deploy. So, for example, Lamindra that we mentioned, she gives her neighbors Elusive, so that's pretty cool. There's another one that you have in here. Xanthix the Harvester is a Mars card with 3 power, no armor. Xanthix Harvester cannot be used while it has a non-Mars neighbor, and then you can reap to gain 1. So that's pretty cool. So if you have deploy, you can kind of make up for that. And then there is Archimedes, who is a Logos creature.
This card
he has Elusive.
Like, so up your alley.
Yeah, it is. 2 power, no armor, Elusive. Each of Archimedes' neighbors gains destroyed. Archive this creature. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah. So the cool thing, so as we were starting to go through these cards, and I was looking at all the spoilers, I noticed like everyone was like, or not everyone, but they were very much focused on these 3 new keywords. And as we were going through, I was starting to notice little things that weren't, a huge, like, neighbors mattering is not new to Keyforge. There was a couple of cards in Call of the Archons that cared about their neighbors, right, like Bulwark. But
yep,
there's a bunch more now. Like, there's a lot of stuff, like you said, because of deploy and how powerful, like, shifting the battle line from within the battle line is going to be powerful. So adding those new mechanics, or just giving a lot of things this neighbors matter stuff, is super awesome.
You're gonna have to really. So what I see this doing is that the games are going to get very complicated, potentially in a good way, very strategic. or tactical. I always forget which one of those is the more appropriate one. I think tactical. It's going to get very tactical because you're going to need to keep in mind, like, okay, well, if I kill that creature, then that one's going to slide over, which means that it's going to care about its neighbor, which is now a different thing. And you're like let's take Lamindra for example. Like, she gives her neighbors elusive, so okay, I could hit that creature that kills that, and then this other creature is going to slide over, which means Lamindra is going to give it elusive, and that's a much more dangerous threat. So I really want to get rid of that one first before it slides over next to Lamindra. So you've got to really pay attention to the order in which you're removing opponents' creatures.
Right.
It's going to be very interesting.
It's gonna pose a new challenge for sure.
And even for yourself, like, the Xanthix Harvester is a good example of it being on the other side of things. Like, okay, well, I got to make sure that I don't attack with this Mars creature next to him, because if my Mars creature dies, then the Sanctum creature is going to slide over and I lose access to the Harvester.
Yeah, so I actually thought about that too while I was looking at this when you were just mentioning it, because I didn't notice it when I was looking at the card earlier, but it is while it has a non-Mars neighbor. So if this is in the middle of the battle line and you have John Smith on one side and Commander Remiel on the other side, you can't use this creature.
Correct. And you can't even so it cannot overrides must, correct?
Correct.
So if you use John Smith to ready it and go to you, or not John Smith, he's maybe a bad example. There's like Sanctum cards that let you use a creature that's out of house. If you have a card that tells you, oh, ready and use a creature, well, you still can't use this guy if he has a non-Mars neighbor. Like,
Right.
he's still locked down. So you got to be careful with how you're doing things.
Right.
It's a brave new world.
Yeah. So speaking of that, there's the only way I can really like say this is Dis is getting much more interesting. So it seems now we're going to be able to chain our opponents instead of just us playing cards on ourselves to give ourselves chains. And the first card that has this that so far that we've seen is called Binding Irons. It's a discard. It's action play. You gain your sorry. Let's start that over. It's an action play. Your opponent gains 3 chains. So
That's brutal.
yeah, so I was thinking about this in the context of like a normal game because we haven't really played anything other than just straight Archon games. And wow, like handing off 3 chains, that seems pretty brutal, especially if you can recur this card, Hunting Witch or not Hunting Witch, or Witch of the Eye, which would let you draw a card back.
Yeah, think of it like a succubus type of thing too. Like, like, okay, well, so I have a like, it's kind of like having a temporary succubus. Succubus is a disc creature that reduces your opponent's hand size by 1. So or I guess basically they draw 1 fewer card. So this is kind of like a temporary succubus, right? Because
Right.
until they get rid of those chains, they're drawing 1 fewer card anyway. But you bring it up to like the tournament scene, and people are going into tournaments with decks that are already chain bound, have different power levels, have chains already on them, and this is going to really, really punish those decks even harder.
So it really only matters for chainbound events, which are mostly like local store stuff.
Yeah,
So
but
like World Tour stuff that's not necessarily going to matter.
of
But
course,
yeah, I
and that
agree.
was, well, this is one of their stated goals, is they really wanted to kind of disincentivize people from bringing the same deck over and over and over and winning over and over and over. And so this, on top of just chain bound by itself, is even further disincentive for people to just run the same deck over and over again.
Yeah, I'm wondering if this is going to be one of those cards that they only print like what they've said about like bait and switch and stuff like that, where you can only have one in a deck.
Oh man,
Uh,
if you had 3 of these in a deck.
yeah, but then like if you think about it, you can have 3 miasmas in a deck.
Yeah,
So
but no. So if you, I mean, and I'm trying to think. So if you had 3 of these in a deck and you played them all on the same turn, your opponent would get 9 chains, which means that they're drawing 2 fewer and then 1 fewer. Is that really any worse than? So I think that's stronger than succubus. I think that's worse than succubus, because at least succubus can be killed.
and it's stacking, right? Like you can stack over and over and over again.
Right, you could
I mean,
redraw them.
like if you have 3, so again, we don't know what's getting reprinted in the set, but you could have, if you had 3 of these and then you had something like Nepenthe Seed or Witch of the Eye, which both let you
Mhm.
get cards out of your discard pile, like you
You
could
could get.
effectively drop this 6 times in a game and
I think
really hurt
I could.
somebody.
I could see it going into the same category as like bait and switch, where they only do one ofs. I guess it depends on how mean they want some decks to be. I'm sure
That's
it's going to
true.
be a rare. So, actually, I guess you looked at the card. You don't have a link to it. I don't know if you remember its rarity.
I don't.
That's fine.
It wasn't an
So
official, like I didn't see it. Oh, I actually have it right here. It's a common.
wow. All
Yeah.
right. Well, that's going to be
So
mean.
so it's gonna be mean. The art is really cool though. I really
Yeah.
do like the art. I can send it to you, but or you can find it later. But
Yeah,
it's
I'll
a
find it.
dude sitting in a throne that's just tied up in chains, like these
I like
purple
it.
pink chains. It's pretty cool.
It's going to be cool.
So here was the biggest surprise for me of like the little stealth changes that kind of came from their announcement. Uh, there's some really interesting Brobnar cards coming out in a manner I didn't expect. So, and these aren't like weird mechanics necessarily. These are just little things that I noticed. Uh, there is a new card coming out. It's a creature called Kulf the Quiet. It's a 6 power creature with elusive
Under Brobnar.
under Brobnar.
That's interesting.
So, so when I first looked at that, I was like, all right, that's really cool. And it's like this giant who's sitting in like a bed of sunflowers, resting his back on a rock, like picking the sunflowers. Like this really nice, like this is a really nice scene. And but it's like 6 power with elusive. Like, oh man.
It's very idyllic.
My best part is it's the best flavor text in the game, and it's just an ellipses.
Nice.
So then to kind of like go along with that, there's Lollop the Titanic, and it's an 11 power creature. Lollop the Titanic deals no damage when attacked.
Oh, okay.
So if someone hits him, he doesn't do his damage back. So it's effectively giving anybody who targets him skirmish.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. So it's kind of fair to remove him, but he's going to hit like a truck if he comes at something.
Yeah, so you want to remove him as best you can.
Yeah.
Like you could devote a turn to hitting him, and he'll go away. But is it worth it? To be
Right.
and also to point out, if we're not counting Mushroom Man, who is a 2 power creature that gains +3 power for every unforged key you have, he is the second biggest creature in this game
Yep.
because the Khalifi Dragon is a 12. So it definitely seems like when they're giving something high power, they're giving it a significant drawback.
Well, and if you think of it from like a control perspective, this is going to eat up 2-3 activations of your opponent's creatures.
Yeah.
It's going to eat up probably at least 2, because usually you don't see things bigger than maybe a 6 or a 5. So your opponent, and like you said, the only thing that can kind of one-shot it is Mushroom Man and Kelpie Dragon. So they're going to have to take 2 creatures to get rid of your own. So that means that you kind of had a 2 Ember swing there, because they could have generated 2 Ember, but they didn't.
Right.
So that's not, I mean, that's pretty good. That's kind of what I'm looking for in any card. We talked about that before, is I want at least a 2 Ember swing off of any card I play.
Yeah, you want,
if possible.
and you want difficult decision making, right? Like, is it worth me like getting rid of the, Lollop if I don't really
Yep.
have much to worry about? Like, I don't know.
And if they don't get rid of it, you can still reap with it and get your own Ember, or
Yep.
remove something nasty of theirs. Like,
Yep.
it's a, even with that drawback, it's still a really solid card.
So the last thing I noticed is we're starting to see a little bit of I guess that Mars or Untamed thing coming into Brobnar now. So there's a couple of these cards. They all have Grumpus in the name. And you can, like, they have one card, it's called Grumpus Tamer. It's a 4-power creature. When you reap with him, you can search your deck or your discard and your discard pile for a War Grumpus. So only one. So it's not like Bear Flute where you get multiples, or Troop Call where you get them all. You reveal it and then
Gotcha.
add it to your hand and then shuffle your deck. So you don't. It doesn't even come out on the table when you play it. But it's a Brobnar turn. You're searching for a Brobnar card. You're probably gonna end up playing it anyway.
Yeah, it'd be silly if you didn't.
Right. Right. So yeah. So this is a rare. There's another card called like Grumpus Wagon, which looks pretty cool. But it's that card, I believe, makes your opponent's keys cost +5 amber, and for some reason, and then your amber costs +5 for the same reason.
No. What I remember seeing on it was that if you have if you have a creature with power 5 or greater, then their key costs +1, and if they have a creature of power 5 or greater, then your keys cost +1.
I'm looking it up right now. It's an artifact vehicle. Oh, it's Grump Buggy. I'm sorry. That's what it's called. And yeah, your opponent's keys cost +1 for each friendly creature with power 5 or higher. Your keys cost +1 for each enemy creature with power 5 or higher. So yeah, so like you said, like that's I was just getting the math mixed up there. But yeah, like you said, like I don't actually think I think they do have some like key cost increasers, but this is probably their most powerful one.
It's definitely brave new territory.
So yeah, so then the other thing that they revealed, which I'm excited about, being Gen Con bound, is they showed off a bunch of their Vault Tour merch. And man, those playmats, they've only showed 2 of them. They've hinted at more, but I want that Horseman one. Like I don't even care about the Horseman that much, but that playmat looks so
Yeah, it looks
rad.
really, really cool. Like that's my pick.
And then yeah, and then but the Scald ones are pretty cool too. I like that one. It's like a Brobnar band,
I
which
mean,
is
if you like
really
things that
neat.
aren't as cool as the other thing, then it's fine. But I prefer things that are
that's
cooler than the less
that's
cool
true.
thing.
So then they also showed off like Vault Tour Chains cards, which is something I'm also interested in obtaining because mine have warped for some reason, so they are kind of a pain in the butt to use. Um, but yeah, that's been kind of that was like the big thing this week is just like, oof, they released all this information out and we kind of got bombarded, and now here we are sharing it, and I am so
Yeah,
damn
it
excited
looks
for
it looks
Age
pretty
of
awesome.
Ascension.
I'm going to be very excited about it. It's going to make things. I mean, like
Yes.
so sealed will be, I assume, one product or the other. I assume you wouldn't mix and match unless they had some way of like blind picking.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they will even care, right? Like you might be able to just do sealed where you have, the player comes in and says, "Hey, what set do you prefer?" and you get a sealed deck from
Oh
that.
yeah,
Because
that's true.
it's not like it's going to
Right.
change much, Like or it's not that it isn't changing much, but like hey, if you're looking for something in that set, like why keep them to one set or the other? I mean, maybe as time goes on, like the maintenance of that from the
Well,
store
yeah,
is
there's
going to
going to
be really
be. So
annoying.
I think
It's gonna be like,
the down or the negative to that is if you only have like let's say 3 Call of the Archons and you have tons of the new set and 6 people want Call of the Archons. How do you decide who gets that one and who doesn't? And maybe they have valid strategic reasons for picking those ones. Maybe there's a common that really shuts down some major other common in the new set, and so like they're at an actual disadvantage by choosing or not getting the Call of the Archon pack. But that's, I mean, we're kind of getting into
right.
nitpicky spike mode as far as like, I mean, if thousands of dollars are on the line, then sure, this is really, really important information. But no, I mean, I think the vast majority of the time, it's not going to be an issue. I think that stores should probably stick with one set because then you don't have to worry about it.
I could see if you're doing, yeah, I could see if you're doing like a sealed on the regular, and you're like, ah, yeah, this is going to be Age of Ascension, Age
Sure.
of Ascension. Oh, we're going to do Call of the Archons, and honestly, as stock kind of starts to dry up of Call of the Archons, that because I mean they're not going to print that set forever. I would imagine like they're going to probably stop printing these sets, but they're definitely not saying you can no longer use these decks
Yeah.
in tournament play. Especially seeing as there's going to be obviously like legacy card crossover over time. I just don't see them continuing to. I mean, I would imagine they're still printing Call of the Archons now, so I'm not saying like the stock is completely gone and you're never going to get a Call of the Archon deck
Right.
ever again. But yeah, I agree. Like, I think over time it's just going to be like, well, we're only ordering Age of Ascension. These are the only decks we have in stock. That's why that would happen. But I would imagine if someone like some store owner was creative and they were running a game, they were running a sealed event. They're like, hey, we're going to run a mixed sealed, and you come in, you choose the pack that you want when you buy, like when you come in. And if you didn't get here in time to get your Call of the Archon packs, well,
Yep.
sorry, buddy. Like, you're gonna get a Age of Ascension instead, or the other way around. Hey, we ran out of Age of Ascension. We got some Call of the Archons, but we still want you to participate in this. So here's your Call of the Archon stack.
Yep, makes sense. I'm hoping that this print run is much, much bigger, because it's just annoying. Like every store, almost in the state, it seems, isn't getting, doesn't have packs.
Yeah, it seemed like at Captain Con, 2 boxes got brought by one vendor. Day 1, they sold out almost immediately, and
Yep.
then day 2, by the time I got to them, which is admittedly a little bit earlier on in the day, or later on in the day. I think I probably went over there around like noon, and they still had like 8 decks left. So, but that was also like peak tournament time. So I think that the tournament play, like people who were playing in the miniatures tournaments at the
Oh, right.
the convention probably
yeah.
weren't. Yeah,
They weren't over there buying stuff. So,
but yeah, so I think that does it for us. I mean, we had to like rewrite our whole show notes before we recorded this because it was a bunch of information we didn't want to wait on talking about. But do you have anything that you want to plug, Ryan, while we're here? Any new neat things?
Not really. No.
All right.
I got nothing.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So yeah, you can catch up with us on Facebook and Twitter at Keychains Pod. You can, if you want to send us an email, ask us questions, you can always send us an email at keychainspod@gmail.com. If you actually want to check us out on our website, which is really just bringing you back to the Podbean thing, you can actually just go to keychainspodcast.com and it'll redirect you there now.
Lastly, now that we finally are on iTunes, go there and leave us a 5-star review. You can try to do 6. I haven't been able to get it to work, but go for it. And if you can leave a 6-star review, then that would be super cool. Just let us know how you did it so that we could pass that along. But if not, just stick with 5 stars. That's cool too.
All right, guys, have a good one.
Take care.